Hello, everyone, and I'm so pleased to be able to present this presentation. This is the one that United Airlines tried so hard for me not to be able to share. Uh, I'm going to be sharing my screen, so I'm going to be jumping back and forth from a few different windows from time to time, so I hope you can put up with that. Oh, here we are. Yes, this is the presentation that United Airlines did not want me to present. How to sell and understand a new generation of buyer. In the next hour or so, I'm going to talk about the four generations. Actually, there's five generations I'm going to discuss, and how to identify them and what the influences are, how this affects their buying, the way they go about buying, the way they view you. I'm going to talk about their preferred methods of contact, best ways for you to engage each generation, and how to build relationships with each generation. And hopefully along the way, I will work to offend someone from every generation as we go through here. Actually, it's not hard to do. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different generations out there, and this is pretty unique. Actually, there's a total of five generations. We're going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to focus on where the prime buyers are. Typically, the buyers of promotional products are marketing managers, brand managers, assistant marketing people, and admins. They tend to fall in that 28 to 34-year-old age range, which puts them smack dab in the millennial generation. And they buy a lot differently than the others. However, there's still a lot of buyers in other generations, and we're going to talk about them as well. Let me ask you a question. Which generation, if you have to contact a customer, which type of communication do they prefer? Face-to-face communication, by telephone, by email, or by texting? We're going to talk about that in today's presentation. What generation are you? As a teenager, you rebelled and challenged authority. Or, as a teenager, you respected your parents. When you were a teenager, friends were more important than family. Or, as a teenager, you counted on your parents for advice and guidance. That's four different ways that teenagers related to their parents, and they're very reflective of the four generations that we're going to focus on today. The answer to the first one, rebellious, I'm a member of that generation, the baby boomers. We were known to rebel, and it was expected of us. We protested the war, burned bras, and protested in the streets, and really lived in a time of major social change. The matures, or the silent generation, they grew up with a lot of respect. Respect your elders, respect your parents, and they lived it and continue to. And if you're a Gen Xer, you probably were a latchkey kid. You probably came home from school pretty independent at an early age and hung out with your friends, and they became your second family, or you're probably closer than your family. If you're part of the millennial generation, you've counted on your parents and you count on them for advice and guidance. As a matter of fact, I'm going to throw a stat at you about the number of millennials that actually take their parents to job interviews with them. So as you're beginning to see, there's a lot of differences there. First one I'm going to talk about is the silent generation, also known as the matures or the traditionalists. Actually, they're a subset of the greatest generation. Let me show you a little clip here. That's the silent generation. And boy, that music and background stuff, does it even seem possible that this is a group that's still in the workforce? But actually, 3% of the workforce today is made up of the silent generation. This generation was born between 1925 and 1945. They are age 71 and over now. So they tend to probably be very high-level executives, senior-level executives, owners, and also there's the other side of people who have retired, taken another job. Perhaps they're helping out a startup company or working in more of a consulting role. But you're going to have some members of the silent generation that you'll be selling to. These people value being a team player. They grew up with a nuclear family, meaning mom and dad, and mom probably was a stay-at-home, didn't have a job outside of the home family. Very hierarchical, very structured. They have that kind of military upbringing as well as a very corporate structure ladder. Very loyal. This group prefers that you send them a letter or call them. There's about 40 million of them today, and their average household income is around $40,000. This is a group that when you write them, you use their title, you use Dear Mr., you sign it with your name and your title and the company you're with. Their defining idea is duty. And around the ideas of money, they put it away and they pay cash. They save up for that new car, buy the new car with cash, and then start saving for its replacement. Warren Buffett is an example of a person of that generation. Growing up, to do major calculations, they used a slide rule. And telephones were rotary phones as opposed to ringing the old crank on there and yelling for Mabel. Rotary phones were an innovation and technology innovation for them, as was the television. It's 9 o'clock. Where are you going to find them? You'll find them at home. They grew up with the type of music that was playing in that video, as well as the heroes were Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. For them, work was an inevitable obligation, something that you just had to do. It was there. It goes back to that duty thing. And for them, education was really a dream. Not many people really believed that they would have a chance to extend their education. It was a pretty wide-ranging dream. They were defined, the social things going on during their formative years that really shaped how they believe and how they act were the Great Depression. My parents were of the greatest generation, just a little before the traditionalists, and boy, were they frugal. They got toasters repaired. My mom darned socks. You didn't waste anything because they had lived through that period of great scarcity. The New Deal, which Roosevelt brought along, that was responsible for helping create the great middle class, affected them. Everybody I know in that generation can tell you exactly where they were, what they were doing when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was one of those things that they will just never forget. Very much shaped by World War II, when America actually sacrificed and everybody pitched in to win this battle of good versus evil and save the world from Adolf Hitler. Then they saw the world change and warfare change with the dropping of the atomic bomb. And then the GI Bill came along to start promising an education. But war followed war, with the Korean War followed by the Cold War. If you want to engage a silent, make sure you're very respectful. Introduce yourself, theirself. You can ask them how they prefer to be contacted, how they want to be communicated with. Ask for and play by their rules. This is a good group to emphasize quality. If there's a guarantee or a warranty, talk about it. If it's a brand that's known for quality, emphasize that. That Great Depression influence on them really makes them value high quality. Made in the USA will resonate with this group. Use testimonials. Tell them about how other people have been successful using your products and services. Make sure you stay in touch. Some of the other generations aren't going to be so open to this, but this is one of the groups that every 6 weeks, maybe every 2 months or every quarter, you could call and say, hey, I'm just touching base. Anything I can do with you, do for you. And make sure everything you promise that you deliver on. Make it easy for them. particularly with technology. There's a lot of different levels of comfort with that. Everything you can do to make ordering easy, following up easy, knowing what their status of their orders is, even going down to having an easy to understand invoice is important. Work hard for them and show your dedication. Okay, folks, which generation is the median buyer of Harley Davidsons? Was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year. They have a career goal to, quote unquote, build a stellar career. And with work, they prefer their feedback once a year with lots of documentation. Of course, I'm talking about my generation, the baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964. Makes it real easy to remember that, 46, 64, see how they kind of invert. Baby boomers, woohoo, boy do we think we're important, and boy do we think we're something. Baby boomers were the biggest generation. We had a huge impact, and everybody kowtowed to us. And we thought we would never, ever get old. Here are the baby boomers. Yeah, the baby boomers. We are something, and have had a major influence, and there's a lot of us still in the workforce. However, more and more we've been moving out of those buyer seats. 31% of the workforce, but it's in decline. It's going to be down to 22% by the year 2020. We're currently aged between 52 and 70, and yeah, we're self-absorbed. We got to oversee and were greatly responsible for the disintegrating family. During the baby boomers' prime years, marriage and divorce rates rather skyrocketed, and the powerful nuclear family that was part of American life started falling apart. But we're not all bad. We're very hardworking, very goal-oriented, and we're very comfortable in hierarchies like the generation before us. We know what the corporate ladder is and what we got to do to move up it, and we're committed to do it. Baby boomers prefer to be reached by telephone. Give me a call. Touch base with me. There's 80 million of us and have an average household income of almost $60,000. There's Bill Gates. He's a baby boomer. Our defining idea, individuality. Around money, we love debt. Buy now, pay later. We are so optimistic that things are always going to be better, that we're going to make more next year than we did last year, that it's like we want it, we buy it, put it on a credit card and pay for it later. For us, the technology that affected us needed to do some calculations. You could buy a Texas Instruments calculator for around $500. Yeah, calculators used to cost as much as computers do today when they were first coming out and replacing those slide rules. We saw telephones move from the dial to the touch tone to cordless, and we were just wowed by the fax machine. And now we're seeing fewer and fewer of them, but I remember the amazement of seeing an image come through over the telephone on my first fax machine. And I'm sure other boomers listening to this probably did as well. It's 9 o'clock. Where are you going to find a baby boomer? 9 p.m. A lot of them are still in the office. We're workaholics, and we got to get the job done, and there's always more that we can do. With music, we own it, baby, and we know it. We like to brag about having the best music. Pretty much invented rock and roll. Beatles, Rolling Stones, all the good music came during the baby boomer generation. For us, work's an exciting adventure. We love to work. You know, a lot of people don't understand how much I enjoy working because it's something I do. It is an exciting adventure. We grew up after the GI Bill was in place, and so education was just a birthright. We understood after high school, you need to go to college, and it's just something that everybody did. We had some defining moments that have shaped who we are. One was the Cold War. The picture on the screen shows what many of us baby boomers remember. Nuclear war tests of drills where we had to duck under our desks as if that was going to save us from a nuclear bomb. But we grew up with a real fear of being attacked by the Russians and of a potential war. And then Vietnam. Vietnam War came. We saw this huge draft of, we saw it on the news. We used to, the newscast used to show firefights, and it was a regular thing to be seeing caskets being unloaded from planes. Strong defining moment for me was remembering the day that the draft lottery was held, and I was fortunate to have a fairly high number. I was considered out of the danger range, but just right on that fringe where if the war escalated in a little bit, I could have been called up. And of course, the protests for the war. I remember very much, just as the generation before me knows exactly where they were when Pearl Harbor was attacked. I remember in 5th grade, Mr. Ehlers coming into the classroom when we got back from recess saying, "The buses are lining up. President Kennedy has been shot. School is being released early today." I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated and the fear and the anxiety that swept the nation and particularly us during our formative years. And the picture of Robert F. Kennedy on the floor of that hotel right after he'd said, "And now on to Chicago." Those are things that are just seared into the mind. And of course, our generation brought sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and we were good at it. And Woodstock was the key celebration and example of that. There was the 1968 Democratic Convention where there was rioting, and some called it a police riot, just a total social upheaval going on. Of course, the birth control pill came on and brought along the sexual revolution and a major change of the mores in the country. There was Roe versus Wade and of course, Watergate. There's still a lot of us in the workplace, and you have to sell to them. So how do you sell to a boomer? Remember that we're optimistic. Like I said, we're the buy it now, pay it later. We really believe that tomorrow we're going to even be better than we were today. We love name brands. We wore a lot of silly things like members only jackets with the epaulets because it said members only on it. We had the go-go years of the 90s where we really brought brand names like BMW and Rolex and other prestige brands. The baby boomers made that happen. So when you're selling and you've got product lines that feature name brands, particularly prestigious brands, use it. Be personable and make it person to person. Make sure they know who you are and that you're dealing with them as a person, not as a title or a job level. Emphasize teamwork and talk about how you can become part of their team and show them and tell them the roles that you can play as a team member. Make sure you let them know that everything can be customized and that you can create custom solutions. Also talk about personalization, and I recommend if you're doing self-promotions, put their name on the pen, put their name on the Padfolio, but also make sure that you are making recommendations about personalizing the solutions that you're bringing to them. You can go ahead and sell to us boomers. We know sales. We've read all of the books. We know the Ben Franklin close and all of the other closes, and it's okay. We recognize you as a sales professional. Go ahead and be a salesperson. We expect you to ask for the order. But you need to show us that you're working hard for us. We need to know that you did your research, that you learned something about our company, that you learned something about our industry, that you learned something about our problems, and that you're really working hard to earn my business. With boomers, court them. Um, think of it as dating. You got to let them get to know you. Take them out for coffee. Take them out for lunch. Really work at building that relationship step by step. And again, it goes back to making it person to person. Look for their signs of accomplishment. Us boomers, we wear our accomplishments. We've got the lapel pins and the plaques, and if you look around their office, you'll probably see some plaques and awards and so on. Comment on them, point them out, and show them that you noticed them. As a boomer, you'll sometimes see a whole EIEIO of initials behind my last name. That's some very symptomatic of a baby boomer. Paul A. Kiewit, MAS Plus, CPC, CIP, CC, EIEIO. Boomers have a whole range of comfort level with technology. We are digital immigrants. We have had to learn everything. Some of us started with a 128K or a 512K computer, and it's just been shifting and growing. And some boomers are still trying to figure out how to get on Facebook. Others are writing code and creating websites. So there's a broad range, and as you're building your technology solutions and communication channels in sales, make sure when you're working with boomers that you understand each one's individual comfort level of technology so that you can be sensitive to that and help them. Appeal to their ego. As I mentioned, point out their signs of accomplishment. Make them feel visionary. Make them feel strategic and creative. Get them involved in the whole process and point out the things they're doing. When you can get a boomer to make a suggestion and then you incorporate it and you're giving them credit for it, you've just put them on the team. Nostalgia. Our music is a good point of it. Even some of the prestigious labels and so on, but we'll talk about old TV shows, old movies, and so on. We're very much into nostalgia, but make sure that you're not pointing out it on an age basis. Like, oh yeah, that was really big 50 years ago. You don't want to be doing that. As my video that I showed at the onset, we think we don't age. And be respectful of their children. And their children are either Gen Xers or millennials. So don't be hating on the millennials. Don't be commenting negatively about tattoos or piercings or laziness or anything negative about the younger generation to them, because you very well could be insulting their kid. Now let's talk about which generation is the sales-proof generation. Which generation is most likely to view salespeople as desperate and dishonest? Which generation is the average home buyer today? Which generation is the first American generation to be less well off than their parents? Which generation includes the founders of Dell, Google, and Yahoo? Yep, I'm talking about Gen Xers. Gen Xers born between 1965 and 1981. And I'm probably talking to a lot of Gen Xers now, so excuse the stereotypes. I just did it with the previous two generations, and I'm going to do it with yours. You're a cynical bunch, and being Gen Xers, you're probably thinking, "Oh God," and finding some skepticism over what I'm presenting. But big part of the workforce today, 21%. You're between the ages of 35 and 51. This is a very entrepreneurial generation. You grew up as latchkey kids, and this is something that no other generation had experienced. Thanks to us boomers screwing up the whole nuclear family thing and getting divorced, and the latchkey kids suddenly had broken homes, or they had homes where both parents had to work. We really brought women into the workplace. Yay for us. But on a family side, they really wasn't much thought into, okay, what do we do with the kids? And so Gen Xers tended to be pretty much forced to be independent at pretty early ages, given their backpack and given a key to the house and let yourself in, warm up some soup. There's chocolate milk in the fridge. Have at it, kid. And so this generation was the first generation of latchkey kids. Probably because you had time to think of it, you also created something wonderful. Gen Xers created the whole idea of work-life balance. That's before us boomers, like I mentioned, 9 o'clock, we're still at the office, still working our butts off. Gen Xers were kind of like, wait a minute, home from school, both mom and dad are both working. When they're going to have time for me? When are they going to have time to enjoy life? They're working so hard, but they're not taking advantage of what they're working for. And so they created the whole work-life balance concept and and helped promote that. Also very skeptical of authority and typical authority figures. And when I talk about the influences, you'll see why. It's earned. Excuse me. Gen Xers prefer to be communicated with email. They're more likely to respond fairly quickly than any of the other generations to email. There's about 60 million of them, so they were smaller than the boomers. We had 80 million. But as I mentioned, first generation where household income actually declined and less well off than their parents. Average income around $50,000. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, is an example of a Gen Xer. Gen Xers began to understand and appreciate diversity of people, diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. Around money, I think they saw a lot of their baby boomer parents filing for bankruptcy and getting themselves in trouble because this generation is very cautious with their money, very much into saving and putting it away. Save, be cautious with their spend. With technology, Lotus 1-2-3 and databases eventually moving into Microsoft Excel, spreadsheets came into being. And where us boomers saw the phone lose its cord, Gen Xers saw the evolution of the cell phone and having it as a technology innovation that became part of their life. And then, of course, the personal computer. It's 9 o'clock. Where are you going to find an Xer? Talked about that work-life balance. They're going to be home spending some quality time with their family. It's 9 o'clock. They're probably putting their kids to bed or watching a TV show or playing a board game with them. Shaped by the music of Madonna and Nirvana, for them, work's a difficult challenge. How do you fit it in? You need to make money, but you also want to have some real quality to your life. They find work a difficult challenge. They didn't find education as you need as something that you just take for granted, or even that you may necessarily want, but more of a necessity. Basically, you had to get there. Their baby boomer overachieving parents were drilling it into their head that if you don't get a college education, you can't go anywhere in life. You need it to get there. And so that was their view of education. A lot of interesting defining moments for Gen Xers, very much shaped by our baby boomer pop culture, the music, entertainment that boomers really drove and created a lot of fun things around. Gen Xers got to enjoy that. They got to watch a president resign and lie to the nation and the whole Watergate scandal. They lived through a period during their defining years of unbelievable inflation. You may remember gas lines. You may remember the prime rate hitting 16%. Inflation just went crazy for a while. Reason to be disappointed? They watched our great, powerful nation have 40 citizens taken hostage in Iran, and us seeming just totally impotent in terms of being able to do anything about it. Matter of fact, we sent in a helicopter rescue operation, seemingly forgetting that helicopters don't like sand and the backwash from the the propellers killed the engines, and we had this major embarrassment of needing to flee, leaving our helicopters behind in the desert. The Challenger disaster. When I say the word NASA, what do you think of? When I'm in a live audience and I say that, a baby boomer will raise his hand and will say, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But a Gen Xer is going to say, I remember January 28 when we shot the space shuttle with a teacher on board. And the image of that spectacular explosion against that blue sky seared into their mind. And once again, an example of us promising them that we're going to send one of their teachers into space, and instead, the disappointment of that horror. They saw the advent of a disease with no known cure, with AIDS. They saw the president working on underhanded, under-table deal for exchanging hostages, guns for hostage, weapons for hostages with the Iran-Contra affair. And of course, I mentioned the latchkey kids. When they came home and turned on the TV, there was a brand new channel, whole bunch of brand new channels with cable TV, but in particular MTV, which stood for music television. They actually played videos back then, music videos. They've seen a lot of war, the Persian Gulf War. They saw the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War, a war that ended with no war dividend, which usually nations experienced. They grew up with the VCR and the CD and the personal computer. They watched the whole O.J. Simpson high-speed, slow-speed chase and trial that resulted. And of course, the advent of the World Wide Web. When you're selling to Xers, be brief and be to the point in your introduction. This group does not like fluff, and they don't like BS. When you're selling something, list all of the available options, everything. Because Xers don't just buy, they stalk their purchases. They probably have done a lot of research. And so if you show them something and give them 3 options, they may already know that there's 8 different options available, and they're going to think you're holding something back or that you're trying to push them. They'll make the assumption you're going to make a bigger commission by selling the 3 that you're showing them. Make sure that you're authentic. Be yourself, be true, be quick to admit when you make a mistake, be self-deprecating where appropriate. I'm not talking about being trash-talking yourself, but be humble, but be authentic. Be able to back up your claims. If you say something increased sales by 15% for a client, you better have a good case history printed. If you quote that 85% of people who receive a promotional product indicate that they have an intention to buy from that company, show them the research, because you're going to need to back up your claims. Referrals are golden, but particularly referrals from their peers, the people that they're working with, the people they respect. Make sure that you offer solutions that have an immediate application. They're not real pie in the sky. They're very practical and want to see and make things work. Remember this, they value time over money. So if you can show them a solution that provides them with time savings, they're going to respect that. Also honor the fact that they value their time and they feel their time is important, and so don't waste their time. Don't just talk for the sake of talking or to hold them hostage to your appointment. Make sure that you're providing value at all times. Offer a range of options. Make sure it's not just the promoted ones, because they're going to catch you. Also, it's a good idea to have a plan B, because you're going to know very quickly if what you're showing and telling them is not resonating. Their shutdown indicators are going to be pretty obvious. So make sure you have a plan B ready so that you can make a shift in your presentation. Get them as involved in the process as possible, from the creativity, from the color choices, from how it's going to be used. Get their feedback about the audience that they want, the intended audience, and how you are going to make that all relate, but get them very involved. Be very efficient in your communication. Don't use a lot of fluff or fillers or just providing a lot of information that's not necessary. Be efficient with them. This is a good group to educate them on the industry. You can tell them about how the industry works. This is a great group to invite to end user shows. They will respond to that and appreciate it. Now, which generation? Over 40% will have a tattoo. 20% have more than one. This generation will feel guilty over littering or not recycling a can, but they'll illegally download videos or music for free without a flinch. Over 90% of them use text messaging and social media daily. More than 25% of them have a pierced body part other than an ear. And 75% of them will switch suppliers with just one bad experience. Not only that, 85% are going to tell somebody else about it. Of course, I'm talking about Gen Y or the millennials. Most agree, born between 1982 and 1994. And yep, they usually have a screen in their hand. These are the digital natives. They were born with a screen in their hand practically, and they live by it. You gotta love millennials. Where is it? There it is. Yep, millennials. You gotta love them. It's a great video. You'll have to look it up on YouTube. And they are big. And they are frustrating to a lot of people who are not millennials, who are trying to sell to them. And now they are 45% of the workforce. They are now the biggest generation in the workforce. That's why you need to know about them. They're from ages 22 to 34 this year, very worldly. They've experienced merged families. They come from living with step siblings, perhaps even moving from household to household with shared custody, and very, very comfortable with that. This group prefers a flexible work structure and having direct input in projects, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. To reach them, I don't care how uncomfortable you are with texting, better learn how, because that is their preferred method. Or hit me up on Facebook. Big group, 85 million. That's bigger than the boomers were at 80 million. And while they're still too young and to be nasty, too many of them still living with their parents, to know what their average household income is, they influence $500 billion in purchasing decisions. So yeah, you want to get to know this group. Their defining idea is authenticity. Be real. With money, they know that they need to earn it to spend it. Again, different from the boomers, not so much into saving. They like to spend, but they're going to earn it first. Mark Zuckerberg is the billionaire millennial example that we have. Technology, they were born with a screen in their hand. All access, all the time. Texting, smartphones, and this incredible shift of technology that's come along during their lifetime. So they're extremely tech savvy. It's 9 o'clock. Where are they? They're hanging out with friends, but they're still connected. They may be texting the guy sitting next to them, but they're very connected and they're very social. A lot of people like to think that or say that millennials aren't social because they always are looking at their screen, but actually they're communicating and interacting with others. Actually, they created the social internet. Music, rap, Eminem, Lady Gaga. And here's an interesting thing. With work, they view it as a chance to do some good in the world. This is a generation that will rack up $150,000 worth of college debt, turn down a six-figure job from Goldman Sachs in order to work for a charity for $40,000 a year. My wife's cousins are having a wedding reception next week as they go to, they set off to tour the world and make a round-the-world backpacking trip. Both of them just quit six-figure jobs with Microsoft to do this backpacking trip, both confident that when they get back, they'll find a job again. And so education for Gen Y, unlike the other generations, all they see is, holy cow, am I going to be in debt when I get through? Cost of college has just gone through the ceiling, and six-figure debt graduating from college is a fairly regular thing for them and something that they know is going to strap them and be with them for many, many years. Their defining moments, they got to enjoy the prosperity of the 90s, the go-go times, the tech bubble, the rising real estate values, and things that were just seemed like there was just no limit to the prosperity that was going on. They experienced the technology revolution. Unlike boomers who were taught the fear of an attack from Russia, they pretty much throughout their life have had to fear going to school, period, because of Columbine and the rash of school shootings and mass shootings that have happened in our country since then, all during their very defining years. This generation views their parents as friends, and this also is a huge differentiator where boomers rebelled against their parents and matures respected their parents, and Xers never saw their parents. These people have had their parents as drivers and organizers in their life. They've always had an adult present in their life, and they have developed really a collegiate almost type relationship with their parents being their friends and advisors, and vice versa, many of the parents using their children as advisors. This is a generation that's never known anything but the United States at war. We have been at war pretty much every moment that they can ever remember. They remember Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. They remember the election of 2000, where the popular vote winner was not made president. They experienced, actually they shaped social media, starting with MySpace and then turning Facebook into what it is today, and really socialized the internet. And that happened from their influence and concurrent with it. Much like the boomers shaped so much of society from entertainment and education and music, millennials have really shaped our society when it comes to social media and socializing the internet. And of course, the Great Recession of 07, 08, 09 happened right when they were, very young, and it had a major effect on, wow, things aren't always going to be great, and we live at economic times that could change. If you want to engage a Gen Y person, be concise. Let them know what you want. Be upfront with them. Most importantly, be yourself. This is a generation that is very used to immediate gratification. of getting the answers right now. We've all been there. You've been at dinner and somebody says, by the way, who won the most gold medals in the Olympics in '96? And immediately everybody's phone comes out and we get an answer. So they're used to that immediacy. So make sure that you're prepared for that. They love free stuff. It's good news for our industry. Millennials love swag. They like receiving it. They like buying it. They like giving it out. But if you can offer something for free, great group to be using your self-promotion ideas with and self-promotional products with them. Make sure you're utilizing technology. Make sure your website and your ways of communicating with them utilize technology to its best advantage because they like it, they appreciate it. You should be developing apps. You should be developing websites that give them all of the information that they're looking for. With this group, be open. Be an open book. Transparency is a big concept for them. And don't judge. Or as they would say, don't be a hater. It's really, particularly us older people, I know a lot of people in my own generation, will make snide comments about the tattoos or the piercings. It's an expression, and it's a way of self-expression, much the same way that we had to grow our hair long and so on. But they're very sensitive to people who are negative and negative about people in particular. So don't be a hater. To build relationships with them, build up their self-esteem. A lot of people like to say that the millennials, that's the participation generation, that they got trophies for participating. They do need reinforcement. They've grown up with it. So comment on the things they do well. Comment on anything you find that you can appreciate and let them know about it. They will respond to that. That thing I told you about them trusting or being friends with their parents, if you're older in particular, you can be that parental type figure. You can be that trusted guide. You can help them learn their job and get better at their job. You can be that person that helps them make good decisions. So one thing about millennials is there's an old saying, if you're not a millennial, you paid too much. I mean, price can easily become the most important buying decision for them unless you can step in, be a trusted guide, help them make decisions, and help them see that that you're presenting a solution, that you're presenting a full package, that you're presenting distribution, and that you're there to catch them and to make them look good. Make sure you manage your reputation, and you do that by being trustworthy, transparent, open, authentic. Use testimonials. You know any millennial who buys anything without checking the recommendations, without going to Yelp, without looking at what other people have said about a product. So make sure that you have that sort of backup. They're very much into social responsibility. So if you're showing apparel made out of bamboo, or if you're showing a product made out of recycled products, or if you're using a product from a company that's PPAI, Product Safety Aware, or Quality Certification Alliance certified, those are things to point out because it's going to resonate and be important to this generation. They love charitable causes. Make sure if there's a way to tie in with that you do so. Or if you've got a supplier who's supporting a charitable cause, they will respond to and appreciate that you're doing good. It goes back to the work as an opportunity to do some good in the world. And make sure you're using their technology preferences. Again, if they prefer to be dealt with by text, learn how to text them and learn how to be better and more savvy at texting. It really comes down, when it comes to relationship building, it comes down to the platinum rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But if you really want to be effective at building relationships, you need the platinum rule. do unto others as they would have you do unto them. So know what their preferred technology and communication tools are and make sure that you're using them. So it's not a matter so much of when marketing to millennials, if they ignore traditional advertising, then how else can we annoy the crap out of them with our marketing message? That's what a lot of people tend to do. But millennials, they hate to feel like they're being marketed to. They like to feel like they're being partnered with, that they're receiving good advice, that you're providing something of value and you're helping them learn. Learning new skills is very important to them. A millennial will say, if I like it, I'll help. If I hate it, I want to tell them why. And they're not afraid to speak out. They feel they should be rewarded for being smart and doing things well in the marketplace. Again, maybe it does go to that participation trophy type idea, but that's what it is. So make sure you're helping them to feel smart, making them feel confident. They do value relationship building. They also are constantly creating content for their blogs, for their Facebook posts, for their Twitter accounts, and so on. Help them create content by providing them shareable information. Help them make them look good among their peers. It's been said they have a nose for bullshit. They're complete suckers for genuine passion and transparency. They realize that they have a personal brand and they care deeply about it. And you can help them by providing them that expertise and that competence that you have and sharing it with them. While boomers value exclusiveness, millennials value inclusiveness. They also feel very strongly that people care about what I say, where I am, and what I'm doing. Didn't that just describe Facebook? I've already used this quote. If you're not a millennial, you probably paid too much. Very much into swapping and sharing. So if you've got a company with a group of millennials and you're selling one order of 500 pieces of something, you might suggest, hey, let's see if any of your other departments here want to get in on this, and we can bring that up to the 1,000-piece level and give you a price break, or we can lower the price as you buy more. As I mentioned, they grew up with abundance, and this abundance is so crazy. The USA spends more on trash bags than 90 other nations spend on everything. I just loved that so much I had to throw it in there. Also, part of the elevated status of children, they've had a constant presence of adults growing up versus being ignored like the Gen Xers were. And as I said at the beginning, 8% took a parent to their interview. And actually, when you look at companies like Google and Amazon and other technology companies where they have huge numbers of millennial employees, where traditional companies have had take a child to work day, these companies have take a parent to work day. So totally different relationship with parents. And again, if you're older than the millennials and selling to them, be that parent figure because it's trusted. I don't know is not an acceptable answer to them because they grew up, again, with technology and that instant gratification. So make sure that if you don't know, that A, you're honest, but you don't just say, I don't know. Say, I will find out for you. They're very much into hacking and creating workarounds. So if you've found some little things, little tips that can help them be more efficient, they're going to be very responsive to that. They're very much into active engagement of really jumping in and getting involved. I've heard so many times about a new hire millennial sitting down at a conference table and jumping in immediately with suggestions and ideas and so on, where us older generation would be looking at that person like, shut up, you're new here, you can't just jump in. Or there's stories of millennials, walking up to the CEO and providing suggestions to the CEO, things that an older generation wouldn't consider, but they feel very much that they studied, they know, and they want to be part of sharing. Make sure that the things that you provide are share worthy. They love creativity. Creative and content excellence really resonates with them. Make sure you're making it fun. They love to have fun and up that fun factor. Remember, free, fast, and easy. Those are three values that are going to resonate with millennials. As I mentioned, price can be very, very important to them. So you need to be having that creativity, that extra value, the content, the share worthiness to overcome that. And don't be afraid to use humor, especially among the 18 to 35-year-old men. A lot of irony in the type of comedy that millennials do. And real quickly, I just want to bring up, there's another generation coming along after them. Born in 96 and later, they're also known as the Globals, the Gamer Generation, or Generation Z. Currently, only about 1% of the workforce is this generation. Obviously, they're only 20 years old. But by 2020, there'll be 7% of the workforce. They also are motivated by meaningful work and responsibility. They're interested in mentorship and constant feedback. They are like multitaskers on steroids because born in 96, the web was already there. They have just been using technology, and where many of us older folks aren't that wired for doing a lot of different things at once. These folks multitask like crazy. They understand operational models. When you sign off from this presentation, you'll be sent a link to this presentation. It has this graph, which goes along with the pretty much the handout that I'd prepared for you earlier. So I am so glad I had the chance to present this to you. I've got all of my contact information here, and you're welcome to follow up with me with any questions. I will be in Las Vegas in January for the PPAI Expo. I hope to see a lot of you there. And once again, I thank everyone with the brand company for this incredible opportunity. And thank you very much. Hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.